Four, three, two, one. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you so much to everybody who's been joining us each week. And if you're new to the show, thanks so much for joining us. This is Own Your Gifts, episode 7. This is my co-host. Bloody hell, wrong way. My co-host Joey, and Joey and I. Today's topic is on gambling. One of the things that certainly comes up a lot in recovery, and then show Own Your Gifts. We really like to focus on the gifts of recovery. So, Joey, welcome back for this week's episode, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me be a part of this and co-creating this show with us. I'm excited for our guest, and it's a topic that is near and dear to my heart. It's one of gambling was actually my first addiction, it's definitely a big part of my story, and it's one of those addictions that sometimes flies under the radar, until it's way too late, and I've seen it devastate homes and tear apart relationships and destroy businesses, and it's a nasty subject.
It certainly is, Joey, and certainly one that comes up a lot in recovery. So before we introduce our awesome guest, who is Jessica, who actually has experience in gambling and recovery from gambling whilst in recovery, but she also works in a gambling establishment. So it'd be lovely and interesting to hear her perspective. But guys, if you're joining us today for the first time or you're coming back, please let us know where you're watching from. Drop your comments. Let us know where you're watching from. Say hi, please. It's a pleasure to have you, and we're really grateful to have you here on board. One of the amazing things about this platform is it brings us together from all over the globe. Joey's coming to us live from Jersey City over there in America, and Jess is coming to us live. Let's bring Jess on. Jess, sorry that took so long. Welcome, Jessica.
Hey, guys. How are we?
Welcome, Jess.
Good, Jess. Thanks so much for joining us. Jess, I was just about to say where you're coming live from. Let us know where you're coming in from.
I'm coming in from Liverpool in Sydney.
Livo. I grew up out in that district too, so it's a pleasure to have you with us here today, Jess.
How close are you to the beach, Jessica? To the ocean?
I'm about an hour drive away from Wollongong, which would be my closest beach kind of area.
Hour?
Awesome. Hey, just saying hello. Hey, Steph. Steph's coming in from Wollongong. Kenny's coming in from where are you coming in from, Kenny? Kenny's from Texas, actually. And Matt, it's a pleasure to have you too, mate. Matt's coming in from New Carolina. Jess, it's a pleasure to have you. And one of the things I absolutely love is exploring and talking about some of those things and the effects of gambling. Can I just share this with our audience first? I've been involved in the recovery, network for some time. And one of the most toxic of all diseases or dysfunctions is that gambling. I've heard some horrible stories about the horrific shit that can turn bad from gambling. Like for me, being an ex-heroin addict, it took me 17 years to really destruct my life. I believe with gambling, you can just throw everything away like in an hour. Would that be right, Jess?
Yeah, I've seen people do it within half an hour, especially with how high the bets are at the moment.
Sure.
It's quite scary.
I've been on both ends of the coin. I'm sure there's some sort of, when I was 14, my uncle owned a bar, and I was always in that bar, and I fell in love with bars before I could even drink at bars. And one of the first things that he did with me, as probably like 13 or 14 years old, aside from giving me a key to the bar, which was fantastic, was he gave me a $5,000 allowance to do sports gambling with. I had a box, and he'd keep it in his office, and I'd put my bets in with him. And throughout the year, I would either make money or lose money. And I got really addicted to that juice. Now, my alcoholism and drug addiction was certainly budding, and probably obvious to most other than me that was going to be a problem, but it was very clear to me that it was a problem. And the buzz that I got from it, and that turned into had me having my own box, and getting into some serious gambling debt, mostly through sports gambling, but casinos too. Going, taking my rent money and taking a bus to Atlantic City, and hoping to quadruple the money and end up begging for change for a bus ride home. That's happened multiple times. What I found through my recovery, and I did some recovery work around my gambling addiction. I'm also, I'm a gutter junkie and alcoholic and everything else that goes along with it. But what I found to me where was the most, I guess the risk taking associated with losing. Like when I would lose, I got off on coming up with money that I didn't have, which is just another example of the insidious nature of addiction. It's kind of backwards. Like that was where I got the most juice. Like that's where I got the buzz. It was finding money that I didn't have. Like who did I need to steal it from? Who did I need to take advantage of? Who did I need to fuck? And what did I need to chase? And that's just, it's like most, addictions. It's like, I don't know if either of you have heard of that before. I mean, I've heard it in rooms of GA and Gamblers Anonymous, but like, it wasn't the winning. It wasn't the losing. It was the chasing, to come up with the money to pay.
Absolutely.
And later on in my life, I ended up on the other side of those things, taking bets. And I watched family and friends, married men with children gamble away $40,000 in a week, and not have to figure out how to come up with it, and owing money to dangerous people. So it's a nasty business.
Tell us, Jessica. Tell us about her story, mate. Like I just heard Joey mention that he had a part of being on the other side of the fence too. Tell us what's your story with gambling.
Oh yeah, and I grew up with a father that was a gambler, and I started gambling when I was 18, and it wasn't something that fazed me too much until I started using. And, just saying about getting that money to keep gambling and what you do to do that. I didn't see it as a huge problem when I was using, but looking back, I was like, hold on, we were in a pub every single day. Like, how the hell did I get the money to go and gamble every single day? I don't know. But I do know, I was doing stuff that I shouldn't have been doing, and I did cop the consequences of that. The whole saying, jails, institutions, and that is where my choices led me. But yeah, now also being a gaming attendant in a gaming room, I see a lot of people that are me, and I see them putting in $2,000, and I'm like, where did you get that $2,000 from? Like, because I can assure you now, you do not have $2,000 legitimately in your account. And I think about it all the time. Whose card are you using? Where is that money coming from? And it is hard because I've got to stand back and say nothing, and that's my role, and it pays my bills at the moment. But yeah, sorry, I've got a 6-month-old puppy sitting right next to me, so that's who I'm trying to keep entertained as well.
Hey, Max, welcome to the show, Max. Hey, Jeff, the destruction can happen in just an hour, can't it? Like,
absolutely.
You said 2,000, like, but I mean, you can blow $2,000 literally in 10 minutes, yeah, if you're not having any luck.
Oh, absolutely. I have a friend that's not an addict but a gambler, and he says to me, I have no intentions of going in there and putting 10 grand in, but next minute I've maxed out 4 credit cards and I can't even afford a $4.50 coffee the next day. And this is a very, affluent man. He runs businesses. He has kids, he has a wife, family, but yeah, he's completely addicted to the poker machines, and, he's lost everything and come back. And, through my friendship with him, thank God he stopped gambling, because, you know, through conversations and showing him how people can absolutely lose everything, and he's got more to lose now, he has stopped gambling, which has been great. But yeah,
Awesome.
it's
Well done.
yeah, well, it's been hard to sit back, and he was a friend prior to me coming in as a gaming attendant. So, you know, as my role legally, I can't tell people that they have a gambling problem either. I can't,
I can
you know,
imagine.
stop them from gambling, which is very, very
No.
hard. I can tell them that there are, you know, 1-300 gamblers, and I've told them about Gamblers Anonymous. And that's only if they come to us. So I can't go to them and say, hey, do you know there's Gamblers Anonymous that you can go to? But if they come to me, then I can let them know about services.
Sure. Cool. You know, Joey, just before you jump in, like, I just want to let and share a little bit with people about what it's kind of like to be a compulsive gambler. And I'm sure most of you and a lot of you guys out there watching, and we've got quite a few people watching. Hello to everyone. Please let us know where you're watching from. But, you know, and this is an all too common theme that I do here, but people can literally go into like this phase where you just block out everything, you know, and you can sit there at the machine pouring money in. Every phone call that's coming in is just like, oh, fuck off. Like you hear that phone, just like, get out of my way. I don't want to do this. You don't want people around you. Those compulsive gamblers also become really, what's that? Like they have rituals, a lot of rituals too, you know, like they might have a pattern that they follow. If there's somebody standing near them, they're jinxing them. Like there's all this crazy shit that happens in a compulsive, and I know this stuff from experience, guys. I'm not telling you stuff that I've heard. This is stuff that I know myself personally. And even more important than all of that, you know, if you're someone in recovery and gambling, which was certainly my story in the early days, I believe like I'm missing this massive part of this journey to spiritual wellness. You know, my spirit is coated, is blackened by this darkness of gambling. It gives me anxiety. It's a horrible, horrible thing. And just, you know, one other thing that I talk about and I've heard from people is some of the symptoms from compulsive gambling are absolutely horrific. Like one guy used to share with me how he used to vomit blood, you know, which was due to the extreme stress that he was under because he'd blown his house, he had all these obligations, and he was vomiting blood from gambling. So anyone out there, and to make it even worse, it's socially accepted. In fact, I don't know about you, Joey, over there in the States, but, well, actually I do know because I've seen the ads, but it's on the telly all the time, responsible gambling. Oh, that's just my little spit, sorry.
I mean, it's legal, you know. It's
Legal, yes.
It wasn't always that way.
Exploit.
Sports gambling wasn't always legal in New Jersey, but they always had casinos in New Jersey. But sports gambling always went on. But now it's even legal. Sports gambling is even legal, and you can do anything online. So, you know, I think it's interesting. Like, I'd like to hear a little bit about Jessica's recovery from drug addiction. Like,
Yeah, sure.
Did you say that it went that the gambling fueled the drug addiction, or the drug addiction fueled the gambling? And what you mentioned that it did bring you to, you know, it did destroy your life, and you lost most everything, and you ended up in institutions. But how exactly did you find recovery? Was there a point where, you know, I guess a jumping off place that you reached where you decided that enough was enough, or was it some sort of divine intervention, or was, you know, consistency with just coming back and coming back and coming back until you got it, or you just had enough pain? How is it that you found recovery? And talk a little bit about how you maintain that recovery today.
Yes, Jessica.
Yes. It's been 5 years, this recovery. I haven't done all the suggested things. For me, I've maintained my recovery from my drug of choices, which were meth, and in my last relapse, I did pick up heroin as well. I went all out. I was actually a really, really good Catholic schoolgirl, came from a really perfect family. I didn't actually start using drugs until I was 23. When I started going out in the party scene in Sydney. So it was quite, I was in a lesbian, gay party scene, and it was all they did. It was the rage. It was drinking. I did drink to black out when I was younger, but that was because I didn't do drugs. And then I started doing speed, and and it kind of just went from there. But it was very quick, very quick. My downfall within 2 years. I was begging for help. Like, I was like, no, this isn't where my life's meant to be. Because I come from a very, very good family, and none of them have been to jail. None of them are drug addicts. They don't understand me at all. I'm very, very, very different. But yeah, and it was a bit of divine intervention that first time at 23. I had some really good caseworkers that got me into a rehab in Sydney called Who's. And I just kept coming back. I have relapsed a number of times over the last 10 years. I could only get like 12 months up or, 14 months. And I've said this to Danny before. I never felt part of. I never felt accepted within NA and within my recovery, but it wasn't. And he actually said to me, I think that was more you. And I have learned over the years that it was more me, because I hadn't accepted who I was as a person. And I'm still working on that. I'm a work in progress. As I said, this recovery, I haven't done the suggested things, but I just keep going every day. I work every day. I work hard. I've gotten to positions within hospitality that I never thought I would. Due to my past, I have been to jail. So, that's what got me this last recovery, was going to jail, and I got on the drug court program. Again, a bit of divine intervention. I should have never gotten on the program. But somehow I had Sue Jeffries, who's very well known over here, going to bat for me, and which was really good. And did 18 months on the drug court program, and I had screws telling me, what are you doing here? Like, I did look like a junkie, but they could see that obviously I could do better with my life. And I really have in the last 5 years. I've had some knockbacks. I've had, government agencies knock me back constantly, trying to get into the industry. But that's how I've stayed in hospitality for the last 5 years, because I kind of had no choice. I knew I had to keep working because that was keeping me motivated to stay clean. But yeah, it's been a hard journey the last 10 years. I wouldn't, wish my journey on any young girl at all. During my using, I traumatized myself a lot. It was hard during those years when I was using. I was hanging out with people that I shouldn't have been. I was living in Mount Druitt, which over here is one of the rougher suburbs. Coming up against, nationalities that normally would have beat the shit out of people, but for some reason, by the grace of God, I survived things that I shouldn't have. And I just think I'm meant to be here for a reason, and I don't want to give it up. And so just that gratitude of actually being alive that keeps me going every day.
That's awesome, Jess. First, let me say congratulations to you, and thank you so much for sharing, that really personal stuff with us. Congratulations on your recovery. I love that. I love being on this journey of recovery too. And I just wanted to touch on, you said a few things just then that I want to give a couple of shout outs to as well. But congratulations on your recovery. And also you reminded me that recovery doesn't, and addiction does not discriminate. You talked about your family absolutely there. And it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter how good or how bad our family was. I think it definitely changes our journey, but addiction does not discriminate, and that absolutely includes gambling. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Like my father,
Yeah.
I look at him and you would never think that he would be a gambler or,
Yeah.
that he would even think of putting, something before his family because me and my brother mean the world to him.
Mm,
But, growing up, he did.
yeah.
It wasn't to the extremes that I see, and I do see it with a lot of fathers, and it's hard, and some days I do want to sit back and say to them, you have children at home to feed. You have children relying on you, but I can't again. When I was gambling, I would gamble and not know whether I was going to have a roof over my head for the next week. You know what I mean? Because I was gambling when I was homeless and we didn't have a car or anything. So it was literally, we were staying up for days on end, just wandering the streets and going to pub after pub. We had money to put into the machines and money to get on, but we had no money to feed ourselves or put a roof over our head.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it?
It's the crazy thinking. And, and then also the fact that I do sometimes say, oh, no, it wasn't that big a deal. But it really was because, there was a time where my ex won $1,000 and then disappeared for 3 weeks. And I literally had nothing on my ass, but she was like, yep, bye, see ya, with 15 grand. And, that was it was a dog eat dog world.
It gives me anxiety even hearing, like gambling really gives me anxiety. Like, just when you're at the pub and you hear the sound of those machines, which is very manipulative, by the way,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
exactly why they do it. But like you hear the sounds from the eating area, it gives me freaking anxiety. Joey, before you jump in and before you continue, Jess, I love that you gave a few shout outs during, you mentioned Who's. So I just want to say, if anyone's watching too, big shout out to Who's because they've made such a dramatic, Joey, that's a very common rehab out here in Sydney that I literally know hundreds of people who are living and changed their lives because of that service. Drug court is also something that I was involved in. And Sue Jeffries is actually a friend who I spoke to just a couple of days ago as well. So I love that we mentioned her. And lastly, Mount Druitt, like the amount of people that I've connected with and good friends who are from Mount Druitt and changed their lives. And so what, Mount Druitt? It's just one of those bad stereotype names, isn't it?
Is.
It gets a bad rap at times, but I love that
But it's such a great area.
That's the best. So, look, I love talking about all this stuff. Joey, what do you think, mate?
There's a couple of things that really related to when Jess was sharing, and one of those things is what you touched on, Danny, is that the disease of addiction doesn't discriminate. Around here, we like to say from Park Ave to Park Bench. Like Park Ave is like the big, the biggest street in New York City. And, it doesn't necessarily matter what your age is, what your sex is, what your socioeconomic status is, what your political views are, what your race is, your sexual orientation. It just destroys.
Absolutely.
And also the I guess stereotype that most people think people who get wrapped up in addiction, and don't get me wrong, a lot of people do come from dysfunctional homes or come from poverty or come up against discrimination or abuse or trauma and things of that nature and turn to alcohol and drugs. But there are just as many people out there, and Jess reminded me of that, and I'm one of those people, to be honest with you, is that like I didn't come from an abusive home. I didn't really have any abuse. As far as I know, I'm not aware of any major trauma. I always had everything that I needed, and I always felt safe in my home. And, the key thing I had a lot of friends. I always did well in school. I always did well in athletics. And like, I always felt, and you mentioned this too, Jess, I always felt broken. I always felt other than. I felt separate from others. I was always comparing my insides with other people's outsides. And that's the nature of, that's that hole in the soul that we fill with addictive behavior. Like we said, like I wrote in the post, it wears many hats. Sometimes it's alcohol, sometimes it's drugs, sometimes it's overeating, sometimes it's undereating, sometimes it's controlling other people or spending or over exercises. You name it.
Name it.
It's all the same thing. You know, it comes from like this hole in our soul and our inability to be one of, like human amongst humans, and constantly comparing ourselves with other people. I think that is the cause of most sickness. And we just happen to either stumble upon or choose alcohol or drugs or insert addictive behavior here to fill that hole up. So those were some of the things that really, really hit on it with me, and that I could really relate to. And it's almost always the case, as far, you know, working with people in recovery, and you know, the years that I've been in recovery, and the recovery work that I've done, and the self-introspection work I've done. I think that it's rooted in our thoughts and our inability to see commonality amongst other human beings.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a popular topic, you know. It really is. Like, and I always touch on this. Like, I believe that every single one of us, and thanks so much to everyone for joining us. We've had quite a few people on the stream, and like every single human is probably affected in one way or another by a loved one, themselves, a family member affected by compulsive gambling. You know, my father. Thank God he doesn't have any technology and he can't watch this, but I'm going to say it, like, he's a bad gambler, man. He has been all his life, all my life, I should say. It's ruined him, actually, you know. And if my brother's out there watching, I'm sure they can absolutely agree. But it's such a debilitating, like, it changes our whole personality, because everything becomes about wanting more, and you're never quite satisfied. It's a horrible, hideous disease, and I'll call it a disease. I love that dis-ease of self, you know, constantly chasing something that doesn't even exist. Anyone else out there who knows of gambling, like, you're not even chasing the win, and it's kind of what we touched on before, is it? We're just chasing that high almost to lose. It's guaranteed we're going to lose, yeah?
Absolutely. And a lot of gamblers know, a lot of my big punters know that they're not going to actually win. And I'm like, why? Why? You know, in my head, I'm going, why are you doing this? Like, you know, and I do have a lot of people that come into my rooms that are from shady backgrounds. And sometimes I think, oh, well, that's your punishment because you're never going to get caught. But then I also have a lot of, it's a changing generation of gamblers as well. I'm finding, I've worked all over Sydney, and I'm finding there's a lot of younger ones coming through. It's like a new generation of criminals coming through. And that's hard to watch, you know. I'm seeing 18, 19-year-olds coming in with $5,000, $10,000, and it's like, where are you, you know, what are you doing to get this money? And, you know, I recently had a young one tell me that he was actually stealing from his parents. He's 21 years old. He's the oldest of 7 children. And his brother belted the crap out of him. And I said, when are you going to learn? I said, your family won't put up with this for much longer. You know, you're 21 and you're doing this. What are you going to be like in 10 years' time? And they have no consequential thinking at all. Like, he has, as he was telling me this, that he'd been stealing from his parents' savings, there was no emotion, nothing. And I was like, okay, you're heading for a very serious bad path. And but their comebacks, if I do say this to us, is, well, no one cares about us anyway. No one gives a crap. And that's when you know that they have the disease of addiction as well, is when they're saying, like, it's so real for them.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Jess, tell us a little bit about what else you do. Let me just a sec. I just pulled up something here. What's addiction doesn't discriminate? I know you are quite passionate about this subject, absolutely. And Joey, I don't know if you're aware of this with Jess, but Jess loves to advocate for a lot of people. In fact, I get caught up in conversations where it sparks up this another bit of energy from Jess when talking about this stuff. So just share a little bit about that for us. And if anyone out there would like to support Jess, absolutely, you can look up ADD, Addiction Doesn't Discriminate, on Facebook. Follow her, like her, engage with her. She's the best. Jess, tell us a bit more about that.
Well, as we all know, and as Joey said, that was one of the things that resonated for you is that addiction doesn't discriminate. I also don't have a background of any major trauma or sexual abuse or anything like that. But I was born with the disease of addiction, and I do have mental health issues as well that were brought on from my drug use and prior to my drug use as well. So I have generational mental health. So my grandmother had it as well. And I just want people to be okay with that. It's okay to say that you're not okay, and it doesn't matter what background you come from, whether you're from Mount Druitt or the Northern Beaches. Doesn't matter if your parents are together or not together. You know, my parents are still together. They're hard workers. People say, "Oh, you come from such a good family," and I really, really do. And I just want other people to know that it's okay, because I come across so many people that to everyone else they look so normal and they shouldn't have issues, but they really do. And mental health doesn't discriminate at all. And here in Australia, there's not enough services to support the amount of people that are struggling here. Every second or third person you talk to, you know someone that is either using drugs, whether it be coke, pot, ice, it doesn't matter. It's happening. Coke has become very socially acceptable here. Gambling, very socially acceptable. Drinking is a massive thing here in Australia. All you Aussies love a beer. And, you know, it leads to a lot of people losing their lives. Every person I know close to me that's lost their life has come from a background that, you know, they don't look like addiction should have affected them nor cost them their lives, but it did. And, you know, a lot of those people I did meet in rehab and they were given a chance. But more people here in Australia need chances because we're a small country and we can do it. It is doable to make things work for more people.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna follow that. The ADD. I'm glad to be connected with you. Something that struck me was, you know, you were mentioning the young man, you know, not being aware of the fact that there were consequences associated with his behavior. And again, I think this is another slippery, insidious way that the disease gets us is, you know, for me personally, I had major consequences associated with my addictive behaviors from the get-go. Like before I was even out of my mid-teens, I was having major consequences. And none of it mattered to me because the most important thing to me was getting what I needed. So from the moment I picked up a drink for a first time, like that became my number one priority. And it didn't necessarily matter what the consequences were. And it was running on automatic. I actually couldn't even see the consequences and they were right in front of me. I mean, I was wearing it. I was causing wreckage. I was ending up in jail. I was losing jobs. I was unable to you know, form real intimate relationships with other human beings. I pushed everybody away that was in front of me. It went on for decades. I had been in treatment. I had been in recovery rooms. I had been into detoxes. I had known many people who got into recovery, who turned their life around and were thriving. I knew many, including close, you know, intimate, you know, immediate family members who died in one way or another from addiction, you know, from murder, suicide, overdose, car accidents, some other type of accidents, drinking themselves to death. And I was oblivious to it. And you would think that, okay, I was educated on addiction, right? I was around, recovery was being presented to me. I was obviously suffering, and anybody who was in contact with me was suffering. And 2 decades later, I still could not see it. Like that clearly detached from reality, insanity. There's no way to even other way to look at it. And you know, I still wasn't done 20 years later with the pile of consequences associated with what I was doing. It still was more, you know, the relief that the little bit of relief that I got from the drugs or the drinking or the addictive behavior outweighed any of the pain and consequences associated with it, right down to the end. I mean, that's kind of scary. And you know, I'm blessed. Like, I'm truly blessed to be alive and to be sober today and to be in good health. But the truth is which is why this is really serious, and why, you know, Danny and I do what we do to raise awareness, is that most people like us end up dead, in jail, or at the very best in a mental institution somewhere. So this is serious business, and there is not only one way to recover. You know, I personally got clean and sober in rooms, 12-step rooms, and you know, that's what worked for me. But there's other ways to recover. The key is to have an awareness that there's a problem, and most importantly is to surround yourself, put yourself in some kind of community with people with a common problem and a common solution.
Thanks for acknowledging that, Joey. Sorry, just before you go, like, I think it is really important. You know, like, I come from this total abstinence-based model, yeah, and that's only because, like, personally, I had 17 years of trying to give this a crack, you know, and 17 years of failure, you know. For me, and the reason I am so passionate around that total abstinence model is because, you know, like, I guess because I'm still here, you know, today. So, but I love, you know, and I've actually spent 5 years. I spent 4 years at uni. I spent 2 years at TAFE. I've spent a lot of time studying, and I love how it's really important to acknowledge that a harm minimization and different types of models are incredibly important. And in fact, as naive as I sometimes am, there's a lot of happiness and people living their very best lives through still having a social drink. You know, let me tell you, for me, if I'm going to have a social drink, I'm going to buy myself a box of Fits, and I'm going to be probably on the heroin a couple of hours later, maybe half an hour later. But I kind of have, I also acknowledge I've kind of been brainwashed into to believing that. Now, I'm more than happy to believe that, because I love my life completely abstinent from any substance. Okay, that's just me personally. Like, I love the idea of putting a drug or a drink or any kind of chemical into my body. Makes me sick to think that, you know. But yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that. And please, if you're watching, if you're coming from another space, share your experience with us around that. You know, recovery is possible. And what is recovery? It's a better life than we had, maybe. Yeah. What do you reckon, Jess?
It's funny that you brought up harm minimization, because that is something I strongly advocate for, is harm minimization. Sure. And I strongly believe in complete abstinence in early recovery. I think everyone needs it. You need a complete bloody detox. I don't believe in the no smoking thing at some rehabs they have here. That drives me insane. I think that's ridiculous. Like, don't take everything. For God's sake, we're struggling as it is. But yeah, I strongly believe in complete abstinence. I stayed completely abstinent for 18 months of this recovery and had a drink after 18 months. I don't like the taste of alcohol. I don't like the hangovers. So it's nothing, you know, when I started using drugs, I stopped drinking. I did something I hated myself for when I was 22. I will never forgive myself. I punched my brother in the face and almost broke his jaw when I was drunk. And after that, I never, ever wanted to be that person ever again that hurt someone I love so much. I still get very emotional about it because I don't think he's ever forgiven that. You know, and those are the things, like, you know, young girls out there struggle with. You know, you're surrounded by influences, and the first person that ever gave me ice was my boss, who I had trusted for many, many years, and he told me it was smokable speed. So, yeah, there are young girls out there like me that are very naive and dumb and uneducated. There was something you brought up, Joey, about even though you had the consequential thinking, you were still going to keep using. And I've been told that by a lot of people, just why bother? They're going to do it anyway. Well, you know what? Yeah, they are, but at least let them have a bit of education around it. at least let them know that that pipe that they're about to pick up could destroy their lives for the rest of their lives. You know, I hear of 15-year-olds out there that are addicted to ice, a 13-year-old in Blacktown that's using ice and pregnant, and, you know, has the girl that's pimping her out is 15 years old. Like, this is stuff that is going on in our communities that, like Waleed said on the project the other night, we're digging our heads in the sand and ignoring that it's going on, but it is happening. And there's zero education in the schools here in Australia. There's, I think, Happy Harold, where they teach you about sex education. There's a huge thing here in Australia at the moment about consent. There's girls that are being put into sexual positions that they don't want to be, and then that's affecting their mental health, which then leads to, you know, them picking up drugs or alcohol to numb out the feelings. This is where it's all stemming from as well. So this was going on back when I was in high school, where there was no social media. Now there's social media. It's getting worse.
And the ability to share the message has become so much easier as well, I guess, like we're doing right now. So, yeah, I wonder why they look. I'd love to hear your perspective on this too, Joey. Like, for me, it's because I'm involved in recovery, and because I work in recovery, and because I take phone calls from loved ones each day. I actually talk about the awareness being really great, actually. Like, and I understand I'm a bit naive at times, but I think, like, I can literally give 10 referrals to someone right now, but then you get Jess's perspective on it. It's actually like, all right, those 10 referrals, fine, but every single one of them makes all these different demands of us to be able to provide this information, that information, this impossible stuff. Then they ask you to go on a waiting list for 8 weeks to get there. So there's that side of it. And then I think about you, Joey, over there in the States, in Jersey, and I know Australia, and I could be wrong again and naive, but I think where our health system is, we're incredibly blessed, Jess, actually, compared to, would that be right, Joey? Like, I'm talking, Jess and I probably have never paid 1 cent for our rehabilitation to get us to where, well, I should talk for myself.
I haven't.
Okay,
there you go. But I know someone that has recently paid $60,000 for rehab. And I said, what junkie out there has $60,000 to pay for rehab? Are you joking?
It does happen. But I think...
But yeah, it happens more often than not. We were some of the lucky ones, Danny, that did get it for free. Yes. I think God chose me in a way, in that sense.
Yeah, me too. And so, look, my perspective on it is, I think we're incredibly blessed, you know, like, I think, but Joey, like, share with us what it's like over there, please. Like, I think we've taken it a bit for granted, or I can take it a bit for granted. What's it like over there to seek treatment and help?
There is assistance through the state and through the government. Okay. There are programs in place around, like you mentioned, drug court. They have that here. However, you know, the care that is provided, you know, charity care, you want to call it. I don't necessarily know the name of it, but is certainly of lesser quality than if you were to come out of your pocket. You know, and some recovery places take insurance, some don't. You know, I don't know if it matters, to be honest with you, man. It's like where it is. It really matters on, like, have you had enough? Yeah, and are you looking for another way of life? Like, yeah, I don't think it matters whether you're getting it from, you know, like, you know, this last time, I mean, I've been in, you know, nicer detoxes. I've been in nicer treatment centers. You know, this last time I detoxed on the floor at the hospital, you know, so it's like, I got sober, I stayed sober, you know, was it a gift? I'm sure. I'm sure that I was blessed. And however, you know, those places, you have to get out of those places. And, you know, even rooms of recovery or rehabilitation centers or outpatient programs or drug court programs, it's like, okay, you go, you're there for 3 months. I mean, I was inpatient for 6 months. You know, I was in a halfway house for 11 months. But, you know, even in my recovery today, if I'm in a recovery, you know, room, you know, an hour a day, and I spend another hour a day working on with my recovery tools and my tools to grow and contribute beyond myself, like, what am I doing the other 23 hours of the day? I think that's what it really is all about.
Totally. And look, the show's about own your gifts, you know, and I love this thing. And like, it really does come down to I love one of the questions I ask the guys when they come in is, are you willing to do whatever it takes? You know, like people come in and say, yeah, I'm willing to do whatever it takes, but then they take back their will, they take back all these ideas, and all of a sudden then we're not willing to do whatever it takes. And I think, I don't know, but I was very lucky that all that stuff that I got involved in the early days of recovery. And I say it every week, but I'm talking about connection. I'm talking about sponsorship, mentoring. I'm talking about, you know, daily meetings. For me, I'm talking about finding myself a higher power. And even lastly, and most importantly, like talking to people, being brave and reaching out, asking for help, because I thought, I don't know if I ever thought I could do this alone, but I was doing it alone, you know, like, so yeah, owning our gifts. And we talk about the gifts of recovery today. Well, I certainly am, and I've heard some from you, Joey, and also from you, Jess. I want to acknowledge too that we are so incredibly blessed. You know, I feel so blessed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of my role as a gaming attendant, and I see it every day. You know, the addiction to the drugs and the gambling and the alcohol, and I think, thank God, I'm so grateful I'm not there.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not feeling that pain, that misery. You know, leaving the gaming room, walking in with that 10 grand and walking out with nothing. You know, I don't have to feel that anymore. I don't have to wake up in the morning feeling that misery of how I'm going to pay my bills for next week. You know, I've got my beautiful puppy. I've got my own place. I, you know, manage beautiful pubs. I get to talk to people about my journey. And, you know, I've met some amazing young women in the last 12 months through my role as stepping up as a manager, and seeing what they go through. And I'm so proud of a lot of the young women out there that aren't turning to addiction or turning to drugs like I did my pain. You know, I say that to them every day. You know, be proud that, you know, that you're getting through your pain without having to numb it with alcohol or drugs. And I think that has to be commended as well, like, because there are a lot of people out there struggling with the stuff that's going on in the world today, aren't picking up. So that's also a good thing. And there has been a lot of things that I could have picked up over in the last 5 years, which are triggers for me. So death and loss is a huge trigger for me. And I've lost a couple of people close, and I haven't used. So that's been a huge plus.
For sure. Joey, it's been 48 minutes. Thanks everyone for participating. It's been really active, guys. This show's building. I love raising awareness about, you know, recovery absolutely in the community, and, you know, the effects that addiction certainly has on, you know, on ourselves and our loved ones too. Joey, we normally wrap the show up with something, do we? What do we do?
What we like to do is try to share a tip, a tool, a strategy, a practice, an exercise we use to increase our life force, plug into gratitude, you know, stay content, and to be as happy as we can. You know, I some of that was taught about, you know, we talked a little bit about our thoughts today. And you know, I think it was mentioned that it's super important to keep the pain close and the gratitude close, because if those two things don't get too far apart, I have a good shot of staying sober today. But, you know, managing my thoughts is something I need to do. I need to, you know, stand on guard at the gates of my mind all the time, because we cannot control our thoughts. However, we can control our thinking, meaning which thoughts that we pay attention to and follow. And in the end, we are what we pay attention to. So, you know, I think a good first step to be able to do that is awareness of what thoughts that we're having that are of our lower nature, or our disease, or our, some people call it part X, or whatever it is that you want to call it, is to become aware of it and label it, identify it and label it as your lower nature, as your disease, as your, you know, your shadow self, whatever it is, the force that's inside of all of us that holds us back. And that's the first step, is to be able to distinguish those before you can start working with tools to be able to combat it. Because, you know, I mentioned how I believe that why I chose alcohol and drugs as a way of life is because of my thinking. You know, it's because I was thinking that other people didn't think like I did, and I compared myself with other people, and you know, our thoughts, you know, drive our actions and our behaviors, and our actions and behaviors create our experiences, and our experiences create our emotions, and our emotions create our personalities, which create our life. So it all starts with our thoughts. So start by paying really close attention to your thoughts and identifying which ones are the lies and which one's the truth. Because my head lies to me constantly. I don't know about you.
It's beautiful, Joey. Thanks so much for sharing your tip to increasing happiness and building gratitude and owning our gifts. Jess, I'll get to you in a second, unless you're ready. You ready to share your bit of wisdom?
No, you go. You go for it.
Guys, all right. So you've got about a minute, Jess. This morning, I love this. I'm really passionate. I've had a couple of meetings today. Okay, I've been on this journey, trying to build a business, an entrepreneur, an inventor, a founder. But anyway, this morning I had a meeting with two gentlemen down here in Piedmont, and it just struck me, right? Like, all this hard work that I've done the last 2 years, it kind of came together in this little meeting. And what I noticed, and my piece of wisdom absolutely is that the more we give, right? The more we give as human beings. So I'm talking about service, you know, the more we give, I believe the more the universe will provide, you know. So this morning, this conversation was funny because one of the guys was talking to the other guy about raising awareness for something, and it struck me, well, that's exactly, I went to that meeting just to give, you know, but in fact I got something back from it. So remember, sometimes we, and especially as addicts, compulsive gamblers, alcoholics, we want some instant gratification. Like, if I do something now, I want to see the rewards like in 5 minutes, you know. But if patience and tolerance and hang in there, and I always talk about having courage and being brave too, it's been my experience especially that the more I continue to give to mankind, let's just call it that, and I break it down, the more that comes back to me, you know. And I know and I acknowledge that some people have it really tough, and that might not be everyone's experience. But if we just focus on some of those real third world countries where the people are just so incredibly happy and kind and loving, think about their spirits. Like, it comes back to that, doesn't it? You know, like, the more we give, the more we share kindness and love, I feel like it comes back to me. So that's my bit of wisdom for the day. And now I'm really looking forward to hearing from you, Jess. What have you got? What nugget of gold have you got for us today? Improving your happiness.
You guys have done really, really well. Like, I love it.
We're experts.
Well, for me, it was getting this little guy. For me,
yes.
increasing my happiness is definitely about connections with other people. And for me, he has helped me connect with so many people, other dog lovers, just walking down the street. And that is really what makes me happy, is just being able to talk with others all the time, and whatever it's about, whatever makes them happy, generally life makes me happy. So yeah, but you guys did so well with yours.
Yes,
Stole both the
yeah.
ideas.
No, that's so important. But thank you, Jess. But like I met up with you for coffee down at the dog park recently, and you're part of a club, aren't you? You're part of
I
the dog club.
am.
And it's so important. It goes to that connection. That's what brings happiness, isn't it? This connection with other human beings. We're human beings. We're not made to isolate, are we? We're built to connect with others. And when we can drop our fronts and connect authentically with others, that's where the gold is.
Absolutely.
I think it's so important that, there's so much that we could learn from animals. And the most important thing is the unconditional love that they show and their ability to stay present. Like, they don't have a human mind. The human mind is a shit show. What do they say? It's like the most recent scientific research that I read is they could prove through brain scans that 80% of our thoughts are negative and 90% of our thoughts are repetitive as humans. Like, addicts don't corner the market on that shit. Those are bad odds. Like, I'll take being a dog any day.
Oh, absolutely.
Cats, I love all animals. I'm a big animal lover. And guys, before we wrap it up, just one more time, if you're out there, if you'd like to support and follow Jess, that's the name of the group up on screen. Look it up on Facebook. You on Instagram too, aren't you, Jess? Follow her. Right. Support her, engage.
That's a group, or is it your personal page, Jess?
I'm still trying to work out social media, so I need to get Denny's help with it. But it's more just around people. I want people to be able to tell their stories on there, how they're dealing with the system here in Australia, and try and get some change and actually start listening to the people and the people that need the help. It is a very small country here, so what happens in America can seem like this is happening every single day, every single second. Here we don't have as many people. Like, I don't know. It worries me that we're going to lose so much of our next generation if something doesn't happen now. The World Health Organization is saying mental health will be the biggest killer by 2030. If we don't do something now, we're going to lose a lot of our younger generation.
Well, please reach out to me. We're connected. Let me know how I could be of service to you and your mission. I could spread the word any way I can, or any way I can help. We really appreciate having you here today.
Yeah, it's definitely, we can learn a lot from America, and America can learn a lot from us, I guess, which is great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, Joey, we're all one.
Absolutely.
You're a legend, Joey. Jess and I were commenting on how well you write as well, so I love what you're doing. Jess. It's time to wrap it up. Guys, I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined us again today. Thanks, Sean for joining us, to Lisa, to Joseph, to Kylie, to Paul, to Laurie, to Jake, to Kenny, Maddie, Steph. It's been awesome to have all you guys engage on the show with us, and I really look forward. Hey, Sarah, thanks so much for joining us too. It has been a cracker of an episode. Please join us again next week. I think we should get another Aussie guest on next week, Joey.
You got it. Yeah, absolutely, man.
Guest. And then we'll maybe you and I will join forces again, and let's just keep, guys. At the end of the day,
wing it.
yeah, we're just winging it, and I love this journey. Thanks so much, it's everyone, fun. And we'll see you soon. Stay with us, Joey and Jess. I'm just going to end this broadcast. See you guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Guys.